Max Verstappen is having one of the most dominant seasons Formula 1 has ever seen. This makes the fans of that other driver very uncomfortable, and we are hearing from different directions that the FIA should do something to slow Verstappen down. They validate this silly idea by saying that the FIA did it to Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes all the time. One of the regulations that changed has been abused for this reason so often now that it's gathered a bit of a Nelson Mandela effect. It's repeated so often that it's considered true. I'm of course talking about the 2021 floor regulations. In the next 8 minutes or so, I'll explain exactly why this set of regulations came into play and what impact it had. The ground effect regulations we have today were meant to start in 2021. It was decided to push these regulations back a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. FIA have instead added measures to limit development following the reduction in income for each of the teams amid the coronavirus pandemic. With the chassis of the 2021 car staying roughly the same, Pirelli feared the tire construction they had been using for 3 years in a row couldn't handle the added downforce teams had found. The cars had to have a diagonal cut in the floor ahead of the rear tires, reducing the width. Additionally, the rules prevented the designers from having any fully enclosed holes in the floor to manipulate airflow through the slots, holes and shaped aerodynamic furniture in that region. With these measures in place, Formula 1 was one of the biggest sports to continue its program through the pandemic. I feel this is a very important detail that gets skipped a lot when debating people on social media. Most people think it was to stop Mercedes, but we'll get to that later. Another detail that isn't spoken about is that the teams had an indicative vote on the regulations. Aston Martin's team boss, at the time, Otmar Schaffnauer, said the following about it. There was an indicative vote at the technical undercommittee that all the technical directors had an indicative vote at, and 3 teams voted against it. The vote was done in August and there was little indication whether low or high rake cars would be affected the most. We'll never know which technical teams voted against the regulations. For me, it's just very important to point out that the FIA wasn't forcing things. A vote is a very democratic thing to have. As it turned out, and something that nobody predicted, cars with lower rake and ride height were impacted the most by the regulations. Mike Elliott, former chief of development of Mercedes, explained that the immediate effect of the downforce changes weren't apparent until the car hit the track in pre-season testing in Bahrain. I think when we first saw the impact, it came from predominantly at the ride height we were running the car. But that's where you'd expect to take the hit. You take the hit where you've got the biggest performance. As we developed the car, we started finding there were gains to be had at higher ride heights. Our car this year runs slightly higher ride heights than it did the previous year as a result of that. But ultimately, the rules are just a game. That's something we have to challenge, we have to attack and deal with. So Mike Elliott isn't pointing his finger at the FIA at all for actively trying to hamper Mercedes. He just said it was something they needed to deal with. Now remember that. The conspiracy is that FIA was done with Mercedes dominating and made these changes specifically to target Mercedes. This nonsense was fed to the Mercedes fanbase by statements from Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton. We lost the 2021 Drivers' Championship for many reasons. One was the final race, but we also lost it because those regulations were set in place in order to reduce the advantage we had. 2020 had been a super dominant year for us. I think it was the best year we ever had. Then, towards the end of the season, they changed the regulations by cutting the floor, and that was to stop us. Lewis Hamilton says it's no secret that the rear floor rule changes brought in for the 2021 Formula 1 season have been done to peg Mercedes back. So it's no wonder that the loyal fans who are only used to seeing Mercedes win believe that the FIA is trying to hamper Mercedes. Toto Wolff said different things a year later, but somehow this always gets less attention. It's also a great example of the double-think attitude corporate Mercedes has. Wolff said, "We thought we could handle the cut in the ground in front of the rear wheels. With the lead we had in 2020, we thought we could compensate for that. We saw it as a kind of a challenge. That was a misjudgment. During the test drives, we noticed how much behind we got. I guess that cost us a second." Mercedes technical chief James Allison had this to say: "This team does have a culture that treats such opportunity with excitement and pleasure, and a chance to demonstrate ourselves that we hopefully are not bad at doing racing cars and putting a fan hat on and trying to anticipate what we can expect when the racing starts. The validation of knowing that you can pick up a set of regulations like this and work with them when it's realized, that is, it's a brilliant feeling. You get way more payback from feeling like you've done a good job." So to me, it looks like Mercedes did what they always do and blame another party for their own mistakes, knowing full well that their fanbase will run with it and try to diminish the achievements of their opponent. If you made it this far, you must be enjoying this video. So here's 3 seconds to leave a like and subscribe. I'm almost at 1k subscribers now. One thing has always baffled me when Team LH talks about the FIA. They always point out how incompetent they are. They don't know their ass from their elbow, everything they do is stupid, etc, etc. However, they do get credited with that tiny team, compared to the technical teams in F1, to predict that a few cuts in a specific area on the floor would only hurt Mercedes and their copycats Aston Martin. Then they are brilliant masterminds plotting and scheming against the good guys Mercedes. Right. The FIA has always looked for ways to improve the sport. For every measure that was taken in the years before 2021, there were valid reasons that had nothing to do with slowing Mercedes down. I could make a similar video on DAS or engine modes. Maybe I'll do that at some point. The way Formula 1 is now, with a budget cap and a sliding scale for wind tunnel use, there's no way to slow Red Bull down. If the FIA would come up with one of those brilliant plans, Adrian Newey would find a great solution and it would make things worse. I think Mercedes fans need to find some copium and some patience. Nothing lasts forever and things are always changing. Try to enjoy the sport even when your team or driver isn't winning, and don't lower yourself into believing in those silly conspiracies. Take care now. Doei doei.